This video is about the truth about crypto points programs. Over the past few months, there's been a massive trend in the world of crypto where various protocols launch points incentives program to track the usage of their protocol by users. Although these points aren't typically exchangeable for any sort of money or tokens at the moment, there's the implicit suggestion that when those protocols eventually launch a token, they'll do some sort of airdrop to users based on their points. However, now that dozens of different protocols have actually launched points programs, and some of them are dragging out those programs by months, maybe even more than half a year, users are starting to wonder, will those points ever actually be worth something, or are they just being farmed for fees by the protocol? In this video, I'm going to unpack exactly how I'm looking at points programs and which ones I believe are actually still worth doing. I also compiled a resource with 30 different points programs that are ongoing right now that I'll share with you in this video, so that way you can decide which ones you want to use for yourself. Welcome back to Dynamo DeFi. My name is Patrick. As a reminder, nothing in any of my videos is financial advice. This is purely educational to teach you about the crypto and DeFi markets. Now let's get into it. To start, let's talk a little more about what exactly points programs are and why so many protocols are suddenly doing them, as well as how these fit into the historical context of decentralized finance and yield farming. I would say that the points programs really started to take off this December after Jito did an airdrop. Now, Jito is one of the largest DeFi applications on the Solana network, and specifically one of the largest liquid staking applications on Solana. And they did a very, very successful points program in the fall. And although they were not the first to do a points program, other applications such as Blur have done them in the past. I'm going to highlight Jito because they really sparked this newest wave of protocols launching points programs. And basically what Jito did was, earlier in 2023, they launched a program to track your usage of the protocol depositing Solana, as well as whether you use their liquid staking token Jito Sol in other DeFi applications around the Solana ecosystem, and whether you referred other people to use Jito. And it was quite successful. You can see here part of this surge is because the SOL price increased, but if you look, for example, from September, the start of September, they went from $31 million deposited to around the time of their airdrop, they had over $400 million deposited. And if you look at it in terms of SOL, because again, the price of SOL was also going up, then you can see that they went from around 1.5 million SOL to over 6 million SOL deposited. And so very, very successful at actually getting people to deposit into Jito. And then when they eventually did their airdrop and they sent their Jito token out to people who had been earning points, and because only around 10,000 people qualified for the Jito airdrop, basically everyone who got an airdrop had a chance to sell their tokens for at least $10,000 or more. And keep in mind that because of the way points work, where they reward people for using the protocol over time, you actually had some people who deposited $100 or less in Jito and then ended up getting over $10,000 in an airdrop. And so as you can imagine, this attracted a ton of attention. Other protocols saw this, that Jito attracted all of these funds, and then other users saw the fact that people were getting $10,000 or more from Jito, and so they wanted in on other points programs. And so since then, you've had dozens of protocols launch points programs, and some of these protocols already had points before Jito, so I don't want to say that everyone in this video is copycatting this, and even if they did, there's nothing wrong with borrowing an effective marketing strategy, but definitely a lot of other protocols have been inspired by the success of Jito. And you may be wondering why that is, right? Why are they doing this over traditional methods of incentivizing people through DeFi? Well, to understand that, you just have to look at basically any DeFi incentives token. And I'm going to look at PancakeSwap Cake. PancakeSwap has long been the leading decentralized exchange on the Binance Smart Chain, and it's now an exchange on many other networks as well. And PancakeSwap is actually, I would say, one of the most successful yield farms, because they were able to keep a lot of total value locked even up until the current day. And their token actually reached a very high price and took years really to bleed out like this. However, if you look at this pattern, this is basically the pattern that almost all yield farming tokens take. And sometimes it takes years, as in the case of PancakeSwap. Sometimes it takes days in the case of other protocols. Protocol launches, eventually originally there's very few in circulation, so the price is high. But then as time goes on, because they're using these inflationary incentives to reward users, farmers take the token, they sell the rewards, maybe to compound into the protocol, maybe not, and the price of the token falls over time. And again, you can see this happen across hundreds, probably thousands and thousands of different protocols. And sometimes this pattern literally takes 24 hours from the time the protocol launches. And that creates a real problem if you're actually trying to build a DeFi application, because what you want if you're building something in DeFi is you want this steady increase over a long period of time. What you don't want is people to come in, farm your token at a high price, sell it immediately, crash the price, and then suddenly you have no way to incentivize users. And on top of that, your developers, your team members that have actually been building the protocol, their tokens that they are waiting to vest might not end up being worth anything. And so I think that's why protocols are switching to points. And truthfully, it does sound like a pretty good deal, right? Protocols get users, you get points, and then eventually you get a nice juicy airdrop like many of us got with Jito. Well, that's where it gets a little more complicated, because now that Jito was so profitable, for many of these other points programs that are launching, you have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of wallets that people have created in the hopes of qualifying. And so many people are starting to ask, is it actually worth it to do these points programs? And how do you know that they're actually going to do an airdrop? And short answer, I would say I still believe that it's worth it to do points programs. And personally, I'm farming many of these programs heavily. And this is why. First reason is that the fact that you don't know that they're going to do an airdrop, that risk actually is part of the reason why there's a greater reward. And the way that I conceptualize this points farming, this is from a article guide that I just published in my Substack. I say that points are the new yield farming. So rather than doing this extended distribution over a long period of time, what many protocols are choosing to do instead is they do points distributions over an extended period of time, and then they do a lump sum payout all at once. And I think that this is actually ideal for small users, because this game that we played in the past with yield farms, where you have to get in the first 5 minutes or first hour, and then you have to do game theory on whether to sell or restake the token. Basically what points does is the protocols are saying, we are going to reward people who are using more money for a longer period of time. And the fact that they're rewarding people who are using it for a longer period of time, in fact, some of the protocols we'll talk about today actually give you a bonus if you deposit for longer, means that people with smaller amounts of capital often can reach high in the rankings for some of these points programs if they focus their funds. And the benefit of that is that although it's not a guarantee these protocols do airdrops, and I guarantee there's going to be at least one protocol that completely fumbles this, they screw it up. I think almost all these protocols are going to do an airdrop at some point. I mean, if they don't, then I think they're just going to get completely nuked by their users. Everyone's going to withdraw their funds because you're basically wink wink nod nod. They're basically saying they're going to do an airdrop if they're doing a points program. Again, someone's going to mess it up, but if they say, for example, that the points can be used for some other sort of reward, right? This is what Jito said. Originally, they said earn Jito points and gain rewards, and then the reward was an airdrop. But if these protocols say, oh, actually the points are used for a discount or something, their deposits are going to get nuked, their fees are going to get nuked, and they don't want that. So I think almost all these protocols are going to eventually do airdrops. And so I compiled this list of 30 different ongoing points programs and categorize them by type. And I'm going to share this with all of you down in the description. You can actually use this to find points programs for yourself. And the categories that I identified are perp dexes. So those are protocols for leverage trading on chain. There's wallets. There's cross-chain protocols. I have two in there right now. One of them is a bridge, and then one of them is a cross-chain money market. I have the Solana ecosystem. We talk about Solana a lot on this channel. Then we've got Ethereum staking and restaking. So that's Swell is an Ethereum liquid staking protocol. And then you've got EigenLayer, which is this huge protocol, now the 5th largest in DeFi. and that's for what's known as restaking ETH, which is basically allows you to earn extra yield. And then you have all these other liquid restaking categories. We'll get back to restaking in a bit. This is just an overview right now. I've got Starknet ecosystem because there's a lot in there. And then I've got some various other protocols from other ecosystems, mostly money markets, but there's some others as well that you can use to earn points. So I'll share this in the description. But the thing I know a lot of you are probably wondering is, how do you choose which ones to farm, right? Because there's so many here. It'd be very easy to spread your funds out on all of them, and you might end up either not qualifying for some of the airdrops anyways, or you end up with a very small allocation. And so here's how I'm thinking about it. First off, the more bullish an application is, probably the airdrop is going to be more valuable. So that's the first thing to think about, right? Is it a protocol that you are actually interested in using and getting a token for? The second consideration is, has the protocol raised funds? Protocols that have raised a lot of funds, especially in comparison to their TVL and to their users, those protocols are probably likely to have more valuable airdrops because ultimately other investors, the early investors, deemed it to be more valuable. And one place you can actually search those funds is over here on DeFi Llama. If you go over to the left-hand side here and then scroll down, you will see this raises section. So if you go here, you can search for protocols in this raises section to actually find their fundraising rounds. And then the final thing that I'm looking for with protocols, and I'll talk in a second about the ones that I'm actually focused on personally, is I want protocols where I can passively farm points. And the reason for that is, yes, there's going to be many airdrops for things that require you to actively do actions such as bridges, such as chains, such as exchanges. However, I mean, there's a lot of different programs here, and I would rather be able to just say, okay, I want to put some of my funds in this protocol and I'm going to accrue points, and I'm not going to have to check it every day. I might not even have to check it every week. I'm just going to be able to park my funds there until I'm actually able to receive that ultimate payout in the form of an airdrop. And so the ones that would qualify for that are going to be mostly liquid staking platforms. It's going to be platforms where you can lend out funds like money markets. And then it's going to be these restaking platforms, which is, it's not liquid staking, but you could think of that as almost a subsector or an adjacent sector to liquid staking. And so the ones that I'm focused on personally, first off, Solana ecosystem. I talk about it all the time on this channel. I just did another video about my current Solana DeFi strategies. I am farming basically everything on Solana. So MarginFi is one that I'm very interested in. It's the largest money market on Solana right now. Keep in mind, this has been farmed very heavily already. People have been farming it. I think I made my first video about MarginFi back all the way in September. So a lot of people have a head start if you're just starting now. However, I think because it's the largest lending market on Solana, it's going to end up being fairly valuable. Next, you have Parcel. I just interviewed the founder of Parcel on the channel. Parcel is a really unique application for speculating on rising and falling real estate markets. And you can farm Parcel by parking stablecoins here, USDC. So that's another, if you have some stablecoins, there's a lockup period, but if you're willing to lock them up to provide liquidity, then you can actually accrue points on Parcel. And I think that this is a pretty unique, interesting protocol period. So it was one that I was interested in farming. In addition to these, I'm very interested in farming the money markets and other ecosystems. And the question you should ask yourself here is ultimately, is this an ecosystem that you're bullish on? Because if you don't think the ecosystem is going to do well, then why would you want to accumulate a token for the money market? And why would you expect that token to be valuable in the first place? And so I'm focused on up and coming ecosystems and parking some funds for tokens that I want to hold anyways in their money markets. First of these is Prime Protocol. Prime Protocol is actually cross-chain. However, it has major backers, Jump, Framework, Arrington Capital, and then it is technically part of the Axelar ecosystem. Axelar is a cross-chain interoperability protocol. And so Prime Protocol is pretty interesting because it's one of those ones I mentioned before where the longer you deposit, the faster you accrue funds. So if you're willing to deposit for a month or 2 months, and then someone with more funds is only depositing for a week, then by the time that month or 2 months ends, you are probably going to be accumulating points faster than that person who's just depositing for a week. So I think Prime is an interesting one. Additionally, again, I've got a lot of other money markets on this document. I'm interested in this Init Capital. Maybe it's INIT Capital. I've never said it out loud before, but this is a money market over in the Mantle ecosystem. And you can see here, collect Init points and get rewarded. Mantle I've talked about on this channel before. Really interesting DeFi ecosystem that is basically built around having yield-bearing ETH in their ecosystem and then yield-bearing stable coins in the form of USDY in their ecosystem. Plus, they have one of the largest treasuries in crypto. So I'm accumulating in it. And then we've got Scallop. Scallop is the leading money market on Sui. Sui is a fast-growing, probably one of the fastest-growing chains right now. It uses the Move programming language. It's very high throughput. And so to me, this is kind of similar to MarginFi on Solana. I mean, it's different. You can see the interfaces totally different. They've got their own unique features they've built. However, in terms of being the leading money market on a fast-growing chain and also a high throughput layer 1, I would put Scallop into that category. And then many of the other applications I highlighted here also allow you to passively earn points. For example, Stacking DAO, liquid staking on Stacks, or Layer Bank, a money market on Manta. All of those work for passively accruing points. The other major category on here is going to be the ETH staking and restaking platforms. And we don't talk about ETH DeFi quite as much on this channel simply because using Ethereum DeFi and mainnet has fees that prices out a large number of people. However, if you have a lot of ETH, then I think this could be a good way to potentially multiply that ETH. However, be aware that you are taking on significant smart contract risk with some of these protocols, because often the way these protocols work is you deposit to one of these liquid restaking protocols like ClayStack, KelpDAO, Renzo Protocol, etc., and then they redeposit your funds into EigenLayer. So then you're now exposed to risk from the original liquid staking token, you're exposed to risk from this liquid restaking token, and then you're exposed to risk from EigenLayer itself. The upside is that potentially you're earning a lot of yield because by depositing in these protocols, you are earning points from EigenLayer, and then you're also earning points from these specific protocols. And I think that a lot of these will probably end up being pretty valuable. A lot of these have hundreds of millions of dollars or even over $1 billion of total value locked already. Naturally, that's going to lead to a fairly high market cap. However, the one thing to keep in mind with all of these points programs, that's not just for restaking, for all of these, is that probably I would say it's better to have a few that you're actually able to get a decent ranking in than it is to have a bunch where you're like, you know, the 90,000th rank wallet out of 100,000. I'd rather have some where I'm in the top 10%, for example, than I would be in the bottom 10% on a bunch. Because if you're in the top 10%, then when these protocols do an airdrop, I think if the protocol is worth anything, then you're probably going to be all right. But if you're in the bottom 10%, if you get anything, it's probably not going to be worth very much. So I would focus on the ones that you're bullish on and really try to get a higher ranking if you decide to go this route. Again, if you want to learn about all these different points programs that are out there, I compiled a bunch to share in this document. I'm probably going to dynamically add more as more programs are released. And then additionally, on top of that, I have a newsletter that I release every week where I talk about the latest trends in crypto and how to make money through DeFi. And I highlighted, for example, some points programs strategies in here just this past week. Again, that's dynamodefi.substack.com. And for more videos like this one, be sure to like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Dynamo DeFi.